Yeah, do that. Do that. Okay. So yeah, if you go off and then watch again, and then you should get the chance to yeah, request again. There we go. Cool. Hello.
Hey,
How you doing,
I'm
Mr.
okay.
Technology?
Had to install Instagram on my phone.
Oh, really?
You've changed me.
Oh, jeez. Tough breaks. I was just sat there. Everyone just had to look at my face for about 10 minutes, which
Yeah,
is
but what a face! It has gravitas. It has.
it's all right when it's on a stage, but like when you're in your like parents' home with stuff behind you, you know, it's not so. I don't
Well,
know.
it might be for you, but since my phone screen is so damaged, I have my phone on constant night mode, so you can't see the scratches. So as a result, we both look like fucking zombies at the minute.
Wow, that's fine by me.
It's
That's fine.
lovely. It's lovely, as they say in that country I lived in for 24 years.
How are you anyway, mate? Good.
Um, considering the global pandemic, okay, as well as can be expected.
And the shit show that went on yesterday, which I don't know what I don't think we should talk about really because it's.
I mean, we all have our relative breaking points, but I think hopefully that is at least a breaking point for a lot of people. But yeah, and hopefully the British people aren't quite as fucking thick as the American people. So when those kind of more blatant and egregious abuses of power occur, but you never know. I actually went into this lockdown with a very not a high opinion of the British people, but a higher opinion of the British people than I do now. But I've had several incidents over the last few weeks which have maybe questioned why I didn't become a professional assassin. So.
I did read something on Twitter that was particularly horrible. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think
Obviously,
that was upsetting rather than threatening. I mean, these guys were 5-10 yards away. I didn't feel in any real danger. I had another incident today with a woman on a bike. I ran around a corner. I was out for my socially distanced run, which in West London means stick to the back streets. Otherwise, you're going to encounter a gigantic party of cunts. And I ran around a corner, and there was a woman on a bike on a pavement. And to get out of the way, I had to jump out of the way and into a wall, basically. And she went, "You should be more careful."
oh,
and I said, "Yeah, but no, but you should be on the road." And she went, "Well, what about the cars?" And I went, "Well, yeah, they shouldn't be on the pavement either, you daft cunt." So yeah, we had a few. I've had a few of those. First couple of weeks were very tense, and then whilst I think people were adjusting, particularly the real dickheads, but then there seemed to be a period of calm, and now the last couple of weeks it's kind of that imbalance between the official advice, people being asked, people like, "Well, what do you think? We'd like it if you stayed home. It'd be quite nice." So, but yeah, anyway, we don't need to talk about all that, do we? It's
no. I mean, I'm obviously, as you know, I'm not in London at the moment, so I'm incredibly privileged to be able to kind of run in the middle of nowhere, and still you still come across a few arseholes in cars like driving down back roads, but it's I'm just kind of I'm on like Crystal Palace local website, and some of the stuff that I see on there I just have to kind of shut off to. I mean, Twitter's not a great place to be at the moment. Nowhere online is a very good place to be at the moment, I don't think. But
I think Twitter was relatively good and supportive for the first few weeks.
Yeah.
In direct contrast to the way Twitter normally is. But the worst thing about real life though is definitely the guys. You can tell. I don't really have even though it isn't the way that I'd conduct myself. People want to go out and get a few beers, go and get some fucking beers, isn't it? But there's a certain guy who buys the beers and walks out. He's so proud, isn't he? Chest is out. He's really giving it to people who are wary about the lives of themselves and their loved ones. It's quite striking and amazing, the things which can cause pride in people. But yeah, pride,
Yeah,
eh? Pride.
well,
Thumbs,
everyone's
thumbs
got a
down for fucking pride. That's what we say.
I know, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the whole. I mean, again, we shouldn't go too far deep into this, but it is
No,
always
so
that
where are
national
you?
pride.
You're in Narnia at the minute, are you? You're
Yeah, I mean that's the wardrobe. So if you go through there, then yeah, you just hit a fucking lion and an
the Lion, the
elephant.
Witch, the Lion, the Witch, and the Detached Annex.
Yeah, exactly, and a couple of conservative voters.
A couple, you reckon, out there? Yeah,
I know, yeah. It's pretty.
one or two.
I know, yeah. Out here, it's particularly worrying. Yeah, it's particularly worrying. I mean, like we went for a walk today, and there's this big, like I grew up here, so I know it well. But there's this big like lake complex now of basically second homes that have been built by, I think it is actually some kind of Russian oil tycoon, and yeah, it's just bizarre. Like, yeah, the wealth gap, like literally just shown to you, like as you walk through, this like very beautiful countryside, but it's crazy. It's really bizarre. But
You
but
get
yeah,
You get very few Russian Lego tycoons, don't you? It's always oil. They
it's
never built
always
their fortune with basic children's toys.
but they build Lego out of oil. They make a Lego out of
That's a
oil.
very good point. Oh, sorry, I think Ella's trying to get involved. Darling, I love you very much. Could you just piss off for a bit? Thanks. Thanks.
I saw a very fetching picture of her. She's been in a paddling pool today.
Oh,
Right,
that's already gone public, has it?
it's already gone.
Julia's quick with
And
the cute pictures.
And there are quite a lot of requests from Julia to send a picture of you in the paddling pool, but she said you've only ever been in a swimming pool once on holiday.
Yeah, I'm
Is
not
that
really
true?
a swimmist, to be honest with you. Like swimming, submerging, it's not really my speciality. I was a
Just
chubby
terror.
lad, and the idea of getting me top off in public when I was a kid wasn't really for me. So I've kind of, even though I'm more svelte now, I've kind of there's a little bit of a teenage years hangover. I'm not really a swimming pool guy, but there's no sadness there. There's no deep yearning to swim around in other people's filth. It's fine. It's nice to see other people having a good go in the swimming pool while I snooze or sleep one off. That's fine.
I know you also have quite a deep hatred of people wearing shorts on stage.
On stage, drummers are fine.
Okay, but is a topless drummer okay? I don't think so.
It very much depends. In the same way that it's hot and you can tell somebody's taken their top off because the alternative is unbearable. But then there are, it's in the same way that somebody can talk about a social issue and you don't think they're virtue signal anyway. It seems like an honest evocation of the way they're feeling, whereas other people do it and you think, shut up, you can't, and it's the same. It's the same when people take their tops off. Sometimes somebody takes the top off and you go, well, congratulations to you and your pause. Whereas somebody else, you're like, reel it in, mate. You've been training all year for this moment. You get your proper muscle guy who's like, yes. And that walk around the pool is just the highlight of their year. And they really do want to meet the love of their life, or at the very least the love of 35 minutes that evening. Somebody to share a towel with. Otherwise, there's nothing wrong with that on another level, is there? As long as it's between consenting Spanish people. I was going to say adults, and I changed it up at the last second because I'm a fucking maverick.
Yeah, I thought so. So yeah, I kind of like. When did you first start writing songs? Because you've written a lot of songs, but I don't know. Obviously, I know a fair bit about the history of the various bands, but yeah, how did you start?
Well, when I was a kid, I wrote songs because both of my parents are music teachers. I remember one really, really bad song I wrote, which again would have a lot of people would have kicked off about the cultural appropriation in 2020. It was called Zulu. It was about a Zulu warrior his fierce, independence in the face of British subjugation of his homeland. I think I was about 6 or 7. I remember
Wow.
writing the word cause and pause, but that's about. My mum was very proud, and she wanted to take it into school to show to the English teacher, but I think I
Wow.
just about persuaded her that even at that age, I didn't feel as if it was quite up to the standard of Bruce Dickinson's lyrics at that time. If that is a sentence which makes any sense at all.
Was that
Uh,
an early influence then, or was that?
not so. I mean, there are influences, and then I think a lot of people who've grown up in the last 20 years probably don't realize that the only influences you had when you were growing up were the bands that you'd happened to have heard, and you didn't have the ability to seek out other bands unless you went to a place where there was a copy of one of the records which you would listen to. And this isn't something from the 1950s. This is something from the 1980s. So by default, because the music most people listen to, it was Iron Maiden, Guns N' Roses, Def Leppard, Metallica, Slayer. If you were really against the idea of bathing. I mean, that's the way. Or a lot of the people I grew up with in Newcastle went to a lot of glam stuff like Motley Crue or Bon Jovi, stuff which never really stuck with me, even when puberty was giving me hassle, So
Yeah, no, because I spoke to Greg from Loud and Quiet magazine the other day, and because like when I grew up, it was still very much like buying music magazines,
yeah,
and because I was just on the cusp of the internet, so like it's kind of easy to forget that actually the first bands that I were exposed to were Melody Maker, kind of just as it turned into NME, and I picked that up from the shop. Like I didn't just have you didn't just have everything at the fingertips, and obviously then MySpace kicked in, and I found some stuff through that. But I guess it's kind of like
so
you
in that sense, you had the music magazines there, the editors particularly being gatekeepers for the bands that you got to hear. So you've got
yeah,
to at that time you had
like
to
Offspring or Green Day, the
yeah
stuff
you
that you're kind of ashamed of now, but like I don't know.
yeah, but it's all relative, isn't it? It's you hear bands like that. If your previous exposure of bands, I don't want to annoy Mike Venart here too much, but if your previous exposure of bands is status quo, then the Offspring in comparison can appear like some avant-garde art piece. Sorry, I think Ella sounds like she's killing somebody through there. Oh well, hopefully. I don't know. I don't know what the rules. I don't know what the rules are. If a 3-year-old kills somebody, I think it's probably fine.
It's probably fine, yeah. Just I don't know. After yesterday, anything goes. I think.
But yeah,
So,
so I got a 4-track when I was like about 19 or something. My first couple of attempts at being in bands were pretty embarrassing because I always wanted to write music, but I wasn't naturally outgoing enough to want to perform it in any way. Like I always wanted to be a guitar player rather than a singer because I'm just not I'm just generally not that physically confident a person. I'm pretty confident in a pub quiz scenario, but I'm not the kind of person who tries to march into a room and take control of it using my immense physicality and or good looks. Those things have
no,
never really occurred to me.
that's
Weirdly
Damien,
enough.
right?
Yeah, that's our
That's
good friend.
Damien.
That's our good friend Damien. And if not, he can bench press everybody in the submission there, which is fantastic. But pretend cartoon characters aside. So I started. I didn't do a live show. I think I was 22 before I first actually did a show. I remember I was wearing a bright yellow T-shirt that
Oh wow.
a bass player Bev had lent me. Bev, his name is Geraint Bevan, who appeared in a Welsh language soap opera called Publicum. He played a drug dealer who I can't remember if he died in a big garage fire or if he started a garage fire in which somebody else died. But he was yeah, so that was originally the band. There was a three-piece, which was called Best. They were my first shows, and I hated playing live. It was just awful. I didn't feel comfortable on stage, especially being out front and being the singer. I was only the singer because nobody else wanted to sing.
I was going to say, yeah, I was going to ask, yeah, whether that was something that was like that you wanted to do. Because again, I'm very similar. Like Johnny just said I can't sing, and then I ended up being like, well,
but you've got to be the singer, Johnny. You're the one out the front, you daft cunt. You've got to sing. Exactly. You know, but yeah, so, and through the McCluskey thing, I got more confident on stage in terms of just talking, to the point where it probably at times it got a little bit too much. And by the time Future the Left started, the whole idea was that Kelson would be the singer. That was the whole idea.
Really?
But Kelson didn't want to be the singer. He'd been there, done that. He wanted to play bass. And to anybody out there who's a musician or claiming to be a musician, it's a very, you know, as we all know, there's a very fine line. We do joke about this. This isn't slagging the young man off. We're still on very, very good terms. And by playing bass, I mean playing everything on the offbeat. I mean, that's just what Kelson does. He's a funky kind of character. But every musician has their default thing that they do when they hear a bit of music, the thing that they do. And Kelson's is definitely just to come in on the offbeat and start playing. But he didn't want to sing. And he told me years later that...
Jar Crew, of course, yeah.
With friend of Jar Crew, yeah, who were one... I mean, the recordings, Jar Crew, are fantastic, but as a live band, they were just incredible. I mean, they were capable of bad shows because it was all about this very special chemistry between this bunch. I mean, they were kids. They were 19 or 20, and they looked like the fucking Bash Street Kids or something. The kind of thing where when you see them tuning up and sound checking, you think these guys aren't a band. They honestly look like Special Kids Day Out. You know, they look like they've been given instruments and people are going to clap whatever happens. But they were magical. There's a band that lots of people love, Les Savi Fav. Now, I'd read about Les Savi Fav before I heard Les Savi Fav. When I heard their records, I quite like Inches. Inches it's kind of a reverse order in chronology singles collection, and especially at the start of the collection, I think it's fantastic. You can definitely see like the way round it goes. But when I read about how good Les Savi Fav were live. When I saw Les Savi Fav live, and I mean this with all due respect, they were just an indie rock band with a big guy with his shirt off doing stuff. You know, they were good, but Jar Crew were as good or as exciting as those bands were claimed to be. They were just, it was great, and it wasn't dangerous in the sense that...
I think there's a good video. I mean, I know it's not the same, but there's a good video of them playing live for anyone who's watching. And Damien was at that show as well, I think.
Compass Point Festival in Cardiff, I think. That might be the Compass Point Festival in Cardiff. And I believe, actually, that Damien is in that video in the crowd.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
I haven't actually seen the video because I cannot bear to look upon his beauty. But yeah, it's... but no, they were a really fantastic live band. Like, really... And usually when you hear about a band, it's like Fugazi, but it's disco as well. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's just Nathan Barley, but it was fantastic. It really was fantastic. And there are bands you could write stories about, you could apportion stories to them, but none of the, like Rod, the drummer, being a Jehovah's Witness, that being the reason the band ultimately split up, amongst other things. But really the best thing about that band was the music and the live performances, which was just fantastic. I'll never forget going to a Club of Obaco, the Welsh club, if we want to address it in a different language, and seeing Jar Crew play with a band called Funeral for a Friend. It was quite early on for them, and I remember watching. There was about 30 people there. I can't remember who was headlining, but Jar Crew were on, and they didn't have their best show necessarily, but It was really good. Kelson came into the crowd as he always did. He always try and dance around people. I tied his shoelaces together. It was one of my favourite gig experiences. And Funeral for a Friend were afterwards. And I'm sure they're nice people, but in comparison, they looked so leaden, so one-paced is how you just... And I remember saying, there's no way this band will go anywhere. And within 3 or 4 months, they were selling out 2 nights at Brixton Academy. So shows what I know.
What you know, yeah.
I honestly, I have the commercial instincts of the Sinclair C5, if that isn't too much.
Well, I was going to say, is that, you know, because a lot of people kind of pathologize in a quite, like in a generous way. And I think you're always quite quick to say, like, look, when we were doing it, like, you know, originally, obviously, minus asterisk, yeah, I mean, there wasn't that as many people interested, or you didn't feel...
I mean, there were moments where we felt, where we were made to feel special, but there wasn't any. No, I mean, when Do Dallas, which now is that big, you know, the totem of that band's career, came out, it was reasonably well reviewed. But who the fuck wants a 7 out of 10? Do you want to be a 7 out of 10 in anybody's heart? Fuck that. Yeah, nice guy. Fuck it. It really wasn't. And you know, some of the shows were well attended, but I think McCluskey as a band, and bear in mind that even though we were kind of a band for about 8 years, really only the last 2 years of that was serious or full time in any way. I think we only sold out 4 shows in that time. And you know, you're talking 300 capacity rooms, and particularly the last American tour we ever did, which was a long tour. And what a genius agent we had back then, who made sure we didn't play on any Friday or Saturday nights. Well, that's just perfect, because if you're a touring band, you definitely want a Friday or Saturday night off, because nobody comes out on a Friday or Saturday night. But I mean, with the exception of certain places like New York or Seattle, and Chicago as well, to be fair. Chicago, LA were okay, but the rest of the shows, there was nobody there, like, you know, 40 people in Philadelphia. And so it's not exactly galling when years later people talk about this band that everybody cared about, but some of us were actually there and know the reality of it. So, so the nostalgia doesn't really hold as firmly.
Yeah, I suppose you obviously, in terms of the music, because I spoke to you about that side of things, but yeah, I guess I presume you're still really proud of that back catalogue, you know.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's a bit bewildering because I don't know the way you treat it as somebody who writes songs or anybody else who writes songs, but you when you are writing a new bunch of songs, you're very much starting from fresh, from new, you know, a new start in your head. So you don't really feel the weight of a back catalogue as you do it, and it's actually a bit bewildering to go back and look at it all.
It's a lot. Like
there's a lot of stuff.
I mean, I was probably sat here when I was a kid, like first finding like to Intentions, I think was, you know, the first thing I illegally downloaded and probably still owe you for. But
good lord.
Yeah.
No, this is my coping. This is my coping.
It's the last time you support us. Yeah, and obviously, as I kind of grew to love the band more, realizing, like, I think all the B-sides on the singles and things, you realise how much material there really is. It's obviously been nice to kind of get a slight experience, albeit with the asterisk of seeing. So when I thought, because I brought this out because I found it hanging on that peg, and I went to Red Leeds this year, but I just wondered whether you remember anything about this distinct show, which was, I think,
I can't really see that, but was that the Carling tent?
It's the Carling. Yeah, the lineup.
What year was that? 2003 or 4?
Like, Pretty Girls Make Great. It's with It's you, then the Shins, and then Kasabian. 2004. So it's
2004. Right. Okay.
quite funny to see like the lineups looking back on these things. Like obviously the subways are quite are on there, but quite far down. So you see how these bands have kind of developed.
Yeah. Well, they would have been a youngish band then, I suppose. Yeah. The first we played Reading the year before. Again, the Carling tent. I think we were one place on the bill lower down. That was Jack's sixth ever show. I mean, that must be pretty crazy for him. Good old Jack. He was shitting himself. Fair play to him. It's so weird because Jack was a good drummer then, but he's an incredible drummer now. He's just incredible. I feel lucky. I honestly, I'm very lucky to play with a lot of musicians, including my wife. Ian's a fantastic musician. Damien is multi-talented. Don't tell him I said that. Jack is a musician, as a drummer. I mean, I don't know how you'd view him as a drummer yourself, because I'm not a drummer in any sense of the word. But Jack is just superb. If he didn't spend half of his time scratching his fucking belly in photo shoots, then he could. No, he's not a man you could imagine joining a glamorous rock band anytime soon. But just as a musician, if that's important at all, he's just fantastic.
But I think that's part of his character of being relatively understated.
Yeah.
It transfers to the way he plays, because he's not.
It does, but
it's not about flash.
On those rare occasions when I can actually turn back from the mic and look at him, I love watching the faces he pulls when he's drumming. It's so funny because it's so unlike the man I know who spends half of his time hunting around for the right spicy level of salsa dip.
Is that his favourite pastime? Is he still in Wales?
I think that used to be his favourite pastime. I think really I'm caricaturing him from about 10 years ago still. Yeah, he lives in Penarth. So Penarth being, I don't know, just a small kind of town part which is kind of adjoined to Cardiff itself.
I think I've got a friend who lives there. And funnily enough, he likes rugby. So I don't know whether that's a certain...
They like a bit of the rugby in Wales.
Especially in Penarth, I think.
That's the rumour anyway. Yeah. I've never really rugby. I like sport in general, but rugby, if I need a date, I'll go on a date. There's a lot of hug. I've never been into hugging unless I know somebody very well. So it's not for me. And shorts work in certain outside environments, but nobody needs shorts to be that short.
And so, moving from Wales, obviously as a man who's constantly, how has the move been to London? Was that?
It's fine. I mean, London's nice. Especially if you have millionaire relatives who can help you out. I mean, we moved here because of Julia's job, which is in Fulham, so we live in Battersea. It's a little bit alienating because I mean, I know some people in London, but it's expensive across the bat, and most of my days are spent doing childcare, which is an opportunity that my dad wouldn't have had really. I mean, it's a weird thing. I mean, you moved to London at a certain age, but obviously you live actually, where are you from? I forget. Where is your parents' house now?
In between Swindon, kind of Cotswolds.
Swindon, Oxford, right. But I mean, London's a strange place, as in there's nothing really hidden here. I mean, I'd spent enough time here to know that the positive things about London are apparent, and the negative things about London are apparent as well. So, I mean, there's a real sense of energy here as opposed to Cardiff. I lived in Cardiff for 24 years, so I have more than an affection for it. And people are more polite there, certainly. They're more welcoming, certainly. But in terms of in terms of, I wouldn't want to use the term careerist, in terms of people actually getting on and doing shit. There's not necessarily the same initiative in Cardiff as there is here. In London, people do, crack on and actually try and get on with stuff, because frankly there's such a penalty imposed on them by the rent and the other costs that they have to pay. So I suppose that's understandable. I like it. I mean, it feels like living in the center of the world. So yeah, which is great most of the time, but you don't always want to live at the center of the world, do you? Somebody says, is there some more music being written in lockdown? I don't tend to write music very well when there's a toddler and or another person in the house. And because of the rules of lockdown, which some of us have actually been respecting, I haven't been alone in the house a lot. So I've hardly written any music at all. Like, maybe it's probably been the least prolific time of my life, which is...
Well, because you are prolific.
I suppose I don't see it as prolific. I just love writing songs. And there are times where it doesn't work. The times when it all sounds a bit samey or whatever. But yeah, I'm trying to crack on with stuff. I'm not very good with, say, if I've got a really busy day and I have like an hour window or a half-hour window to do stuff. That's not really any good for me. I need a good fucking 4 hours in order to get into something and dive in, have a beer and go from there. So I'm trying at this moment to reconfigure my brain in order to become productive in this environment. It's been a little bit of a challenge.
And when you do write Christian fitness stuff, obviously, because you've done, what is it, 6 or 7? I don't know.
Six.
I lose track.
6 albums.
6.
Yes.
I love how it's developed. Like from the start, kind of. I think I've got a lot of the CDs, and just wondered, how do you go about, when you come to work on it? Is it literally you on a guitar, or do you program any drums at all?
Just on it's on a whatever. It's playing around with the thing which sparks something. I mean, there's not really a process with that. It's whatever happens to work. I mean, say Future to the Left and or McCluskey back in a day would have been more formal, because that's like just going into a room, everybody playing loudly and just waiting for some magic to happen. And the longer you try, the more chance you have of some magic happening. Oh, one man's magic is not necessarily another person's magic. I understand that, but with the Christian fitness stuff, it's just a question of sitting down and having fun making music, and then that just snowballing, really.
Because there's like quite a lot of like almost very like theatrical moments in it. Does that
sure?
Does that come from like comedy? And there's kind of like there's certain bits that are really expansive, like Newly Colonized Moon, that kind of middle section. It's interesting how you wander into those. Is that just following the song and then kind of?
Yeah, it's just whatever happens. I mean, you have an instinct as a, you write what you want to hear. So I like a thing where there's, what you want is one element which is just slightly different. You don't have, if you want to write strange music, if you're strange from the start, if you have a strange instrument and a strange rhythm, then it doesn't jar. There's nothing to jar with. It's just odd. It's like, it's like a custard coffee or something. But if you just throw in that one slightly strange element, but again, that's me going back and retrofitting what has happened back to it. I don't think of it in those terms. You just go with what you think sounds good, and then you get to the end of what sounds good. The one tip I give to people trying to come up with ideas
Yeah.
Because this definitely works for me. So if you've got an idea for a song and you're working on it, like as of that moment, the best ideas are usually, and again, there's no hard and fast rule here, whatever you start that day, try and finish that day.
Mm-hmm.
Try and finish it within reason. Within reason, I don't necessarily mean stay up till 7 in the morning, making sure all the hi-hats are in time, or whatever the fuck it is that you do. You just you capture that moment, you go for it. You can always, brush stuff up the next couple of days, but that's an important thing, rather than just having sketch after sketch after sketch after sketch. If you work on sketch, certainly personally, if I work on sketch after sketch after sketch after sketch, I end up with a fucking load of sketches that aren't necessarily going to go anywhere. So yeah, that's a tip for songwriting generally. It's just to give everything to it, to exhaust yourself on it, and then to move on. Oh, I can see a little heart coming up in the comments.
No, I completely agree. I've been doing some little beautiful. There you get instant gratification. But yeah, no, I've been doing some little bits on laptop while being away from Johnny. Like you say, kind of usually it very much happens in a room. And it has been, just like great to just follow. Have I frozen?
You have frozen, but I can hear you, and my God, it's delightful. Oh, your hands are back at least. You're doing some...
You okay?
I can hear you and see you absolutely perfectly now.
Cool. Sorry, I don't know. I'm like right next to the router, but yeah, never seems to a few hitches. But what was I going to say? Yeah, what are there any? I mean, not that you need to have any plans, but are there any particular plans, McCluskey wise, or is it a case of just seeing how you go? With writing more Christian fitness. Is there any plans at all?
Well, I mean, the plan is as always to get as much stuff done as possible. But after a day of looking after a adorable toddler, I just don't have the energy. And it's undoubtedly true, man, that when you're in your mid-40s, you just don't have as much energy as you did when you were in your 20s or 30s. It's just a fact. So you have to. A lot of being in a band, as you probably know, as anybody, probably 80% of the people watching this are in bands themselves. A lot of it, if the point, or not the point, if one of the objectives is to take that band to a wider audience, whatever that happens to mean to the individual. For some people, it means they want to play stadium. For some people, it means they want 150 people in the Shacklewell Arms or whatever. To get to that point, to do it seriously, it's about sacrifice. You need to sacrifice things for it. Nobody gets to that point unless they're a son or the daughter of some celebrity or whatever who can give them an in. Nobody gets to that point without sacrificing things. The older you get, you don't necessarily have the ability to sacrifice so much. Like if I leave my daughter unattended, I dare say it's illegal. So Future of the Left is difficult. With the best will in the world, the plan was to get a Future of the Left record written this year, and then, well, the plan was to get one written 2 years ago, and then released the following year. It just hasn't happened. We got about half an album written that I really love, and then the plan was to go and do a McClusky record if I came up with enough ideas that we liked. So again, there's an asterisk next to the plans of the band with the asterisk. But because of just the mechanics of the way it works, I think that might actually be the other way around now. So Damien's actually sent me some bass lines over the last couple of weeks, and if I can't write some good songs off the basis of that, then I don't deserve to be fronting a band, frankly, because they're really, it's really great stuff.
Stuff. No,
Although again, just because a bass line's good doesn't necessarily mean that you can. It doesn't necessarily mean that I can. You know, it's like John might come up with the best part in the world. You just mightn't be able to come up with the song which justifies it. So I want to play some shows, but then again, we've got to be realistic. Any kind of shows of any kind of size, I can't imagine that happening till March or April next year at the earliest. I mean, I know a lot of fucking idiots begin sentences recently with "I'm not an epidemiologist," but I'm definitely not an epidemiologist. But just working through the projections, I can't imagine anything happening before then. So it's a question of, just doing what we can. I mean, I'd love to. The Australian, all the shows we did, the McCluskey shows, were great fun, to say the least. There's maybe two of the shows in Britain I didn't enjoy as much as the others, but I'm not going to ruin people's memories by which may be good of those shows by saying which ones, apart from in private where I'll be very critical. But the Australian tour was just was magical. It was magical, and all of that work, all of that work which goes into it, and at times it does appear that if you're a singer in a band, you're prone to exaggeration. You know, you're prone to emotional fluctuations. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a singer in a band. You'd be a very pragmatic singer. You'd never have chosen to be the singer in a band if that were the case. But it's often thankless. You often feel underappreciated, to say the least. But the Australian shows were just incredible. I mean, you couldn't have scripted it any better. I think for all three of us, it was an incredible experience. And I'd love to, and if it takes us having to write another album to go again, those shows and written again, then I will gladly do it. Yes, somebody saying, Manchester, even though that was one of the earliest shows, because that was one of the shows, of course, that John supported on, was one of the absolute best ones. That was definitely in the top 2 or 3 of the British shows. And Gorilla, I'm not sure what it's like for a punter, Gorilla as a venue, but as a band, it was fantastic. It was really fantastic. So it's a question of just trying to do as much as possible, really, not to rush it. Our plan basically is my plan, and I've talked about this with Damien and Jack in terms of the McCluskey thing, is to get to half a record, half a good record, and then basically crowdfund something to go over to Chicago and record the record. Maybe of course it would have to be maybe 6 months, maybe 6 months or so after that. That would be the rough plan. With Future the Left, the plan is to try and get to. It's more of just an operation, getting myself and Julia and our daughter, who again we are morally and legally responsible for, as well as loving, to Cardiff to rehearse. It's a more difficult situation, and in a lot of ways as well, Future the Left is a bit more difficult to write than McCluskey. McCluskey songs are, even though the third McCluskey record is kind of pointing towards Future the Left in a lot of ways. Future the Left is a little bit more, by design, a little more complex than McCluskey. So it takes a little bit. It takes a little bit more time. Not that when we're going back to write McCluskey songs, it's not like you're switching off part of your evolution as a musician in order to write those things. You're not just going to be going back to just, the difference will be the 3 people involved in writing it, as opposed to completely different mindset or whatever. So I'm hoping all of those things will work out, but who can fucking say? As for Christian Fitness, I'm just going to keep writing songs. I was hoping to do more music in London, like maybe find some people and play with, but realistically, there's not the time or the money to do that, really. And I don't have I have a little setup here. I've got some little speakers and stuff, and my mic and my Mac, but again, having a young kid, there's only so much music. If I make music during the day, she runs in and she wants to get involved, which is great, but I don't get a lot of music done. And if I do it at night, I fucking wake her up, which means I've got to go and put her back to sleep. So yeah, not
So
necessarily.
is Ella quite aware of what you do yet, or
She knows I play shows. I mean,
has she seen
I
you?
don't. She always asks for the Mark Foley song. She likes the Mark Foley song, and she likes "Pump It Up" by Elvis Costello. And she liked Intergalactic by the Beastie Boys until she saw the video with the giant robots.
Yeah, it's a bit much.
Now she's scared of Intergalactic by the Beastie Boys. So yeah, that's a bit of a shame, because it's really good to. It was really good just to give her the robot song for 4 minutes, so you could get a little bit of peace. But yeah, I mean, I think she's aware, but she does come in sometimes and say, "Be quiet, Daddy," and you go, "Okay."
You scratch that one off the album board.
Yeah, it's my harshest review. Be quiet, Daddy. Like sometimes Jack's daughter Annie comes up to him when he's playing drums and says, "No, thank you, Daddy." And that's
polite, but I saw her playing the drums to which song was it? Was it Manchasm or
Manchasm? I think. Yeah.
It was pretty sweet video.
Couple with Jack's stupid face. I mean, done a couple of zooms over the course of this thing, and Jack doesn't really contribute. He just sits there and puts stupid pictures up behind him, or pretends to touch himself or whatever. That's kind of Jack's sense of humor. Jack's like a low energy prank video. That's all he is the whole time.
Well, it was like the Zoom we did for Damien's birthday. You know, everyone was relatively, just having a chat, and then you have Adam trying to post up every meme under the sun behind his head. It's Adam.
Yeah, well, he needs to stay involved, the young man. So it's good. It's good, but yeah, there's a huge argument to say that I think the way that the royal we in this sense, communicating in that way, I've ended up catching up with some people that I haven't spoken to for ages, and there's no reason why that's why it can't continue beyond this point, really. It's been really useful. I've got a friend in Italy that I hadn't seen for ages until we did this. A couple of friends in the States. It's been that part of it. It's actually been fucking wonderful. But I'm sure I wouldn't be thinking that way if somebody I knew was seriously ill with the thing.
Yeah.
With the thing that which should not be named. But I think for everybody, just a question of getting through and trying to, certainly for probably yourself, me, and the people watching this, trying to wonder when shows will be back in any kind of concrete form, and what form those shows will take, really. I mean, personally, I don't think there's any real point in doing shows unless they're real shows. I can understand with sports, say football. I think playing without football or cricket, playing without crowds, I think the players will get used to that, and I think the audience will get used to that as well. And it's something you're watching on television, but I think with music, but I think with music, especially, a couple of people have said, "How about doing some kind of streaming shows?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'd rather not if it's all the same with you."
We've been approached quite a few times, over the past couple of months about things, and equipment wise, it certainly wasn't possible anyway. But sound wise, like as a band like we are, like I was pretty quick.
Even for a mellow bunch of guys with you, and you with your sweet voice.
I know, exactly. No one wants to see an acoustic version, I mean, Johnny's done a few kind of like little guitar bits on Facebook, but just yeah, it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
No,
You
I
know.
mean, that more gives people a reference for how to play stuff or whatever, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As opposed to being a like a full on performance. I mean, for me, we used to do early Future of the Left. We used to do like a lounge version of The Lord Hates a Coward, which was a lot of fun, and it was really funny for 2 minutes, and then after that, it was as half-hearted as you would imagine. I
Yeah.
just I like loud music. I've been to shows by quiet bands, and they're obviously experts in their field, but after 10-15 minutes my attention just wanders.
Wait.
That's
Yeah.
that's no offense to them, although well it's some offense to them because why not. but yeah, I like it loud. We'd accept Britney acoustic covers. I'm sure you would accept Britney acoustic covers, but you're getting none of them. Yeah, I'm not a covers guy. We tried to
No.
cover some from the Bugsy Malone soundtrack a few years ago, but
Like that. You really
yeah.
like the Bugsy
I
Malone
really
soundtrack.
love the songs "Bad Guys and Good Guys" from Bugsy Malone. I love those songs. They're just
Is
so
that where? Is that
wonderful.
where in Christian fitness there is that those kind of like theatrical elements that come in? Is that? I don't know. Like I don't know.
Maybe, but
I don't
also,
know what I
I
mean by
loved
that
stuff like
really. But
Queen. I love stuff like Queen when I was a kid as well. I still love
yeah.
some Queen now. I just love, yeah, orchestral at times, theatrical kind of stuff. Yeah, it probably comes from all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I can't necessarily backtrack. What do they say? Walk back the cat, and find out where it came from. But I like a bit of personality in my music. There's not enough personality in
And,
music, frankly.
and in terms of like, because you write quite a lot as well. Like in terms of obviously you write music, but writing the written word.
Hmm.
Like, did am I right? Did you study English? Am I right in
No,
saying
I
that?
did. I did. My degree was in journalism.
Journalism. So it was
Yeah, but really,
with
it should
the
have been
written.
called sociology with vague reference to the media, is what it should have been called. Um,
So
I
did it
wasn't.
influence you at all, or like in terms of
No,
writing, or not?
no, not at all. No, not at all. It was just a degree I had to get through, so I'd have a degree, and my mother
Okay.
could come to I'd have an excuse to be away from home, and my mother would come to my graduation ceremony. It wasn't really
So
a
like
thing.
basically, because I like having spoken to you various times, whether that's at shows or meeting up for drinks or whatever, you're always someone who really like likes playing with language in general. Like, I mean, even on here, the way that you're using words, like it's
Really.
obvious. Like, yeah,
Well,
like
you say that because I'm me, I don't, and obviously don't have an outside perspective on that. I just use
just
words. I've actually haven't been writing. I was writing a story basically about which I started last October, I suppose. The idea, and it's about a hitman with childcare issues. But it was set basically. I needed something in order to create a situation where there wouldn't be a lot of people on the street. So it was actually set during a pandemic. Although the pandemic isn't the story it isn't the story. It's the setting which allows some parts of the story to be able to happen. And writing that since this started just seems ridiculous. Just seems ludicrous, and
just to let
I'm not entirely sure what to do with it.
just to let you know, Andy. Sorry, we've got 1 minute remaining on the clock on the chat, but I'm happy to reopen it if you want to carry on for a
Yeah,
little bit longer.
if
That's
you,
okay.
I can definitely do another half an hour if you need to
Yeah,
do
well,
that.
I'm more than happy to. So if anyone's watching, in basically 1 minute, it's going to go. It's going to finish, and then I'll reopen one. So if you want to rejoin, we'll go on for another half an hour if that's okay. Cool. So yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. So it's kind of seems a bit ridiculous now in the reality of the pandemic.
Yeah, because I mean, I did, even when I was coming up with the idea of the pandemic being not the backstory but the setting. I decided it was between that and some kind of potential nuclear kind of conflagration. But now I'm on another side of the coin. I'm willing to switch to that in case that somehow summons a nuclear conflagration from the bowels of the earth. So I'm not entirely sure what to do, because I was really happy with the
Yeah,
15-20,000 words I got into it. That was a good few months of my life. I'm not.
thanks for coming back.
No
Sorry, just waiting
worries.
for Falco
No
now.
worries. I had to do nothing at all. It was fantastic.
Sorry, cut you off. So yeah, Paul Wembley, the author.
Paul Tremblay, yeah. So I first met Paul because he contacted me. God, it must have been years ago, like 6 years ago. He wrote a book called A Head Full of Ghosts, which is kind of a very modern kind of updating of the kind of exorcist thing. I mean, I don't come from a horror background at all, so a lot of the references in the book were beyond me, but it was very well received. But he wanted to use a lyric from a Future the Left song called An Idiot's Idea of Island in I like as the God, I always forget what's called, the epigram, the got some like lyrics or whatever, or poetry at the start, like little quote, give like permission.
Sorry, I'm. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Just going a little bit slow. The feed, so I just couldn't quite hear
Okay.
that. Cool.
Yeah. So he.
Again now, I think. Oh. Sorry, bear with me 1 second.
Daring.
Let me. Ow. Ow. Sorry. Okay. Can you get my beers out of the freezer as well? Sorry. Sorry, half an hour. Hello. Can you hear me at all? Yeah.
I can't hear you.
Hello.
Hello.
Sir. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Were we? Sorry about that.
I need a toothpick. Hey,
Da, da, da. All
are we
good?
back? Are we back in the saddle?
We are back in the saddle. Sorry about that. I don't know. I'm right next to the modem, so I don't know. I don't
Right.
know whether it's just the countryside or.
No, I think maybe you're scared of the truth. I don't know.
But well,
The sequel is back on again. That's right. Connectivity problems. I think you.
mm,
I've never said this to anybody, but I think you need to move to Sheffield. Somebody tells me they have very good internet connection in Sheffield. And a very good friend of mine told me they
Can
couldn't
you?
possibly move. I can hear you fine.
Cool. No. Um, oh, technology. Jeez.
Technology.
Yeah. So yeah, this piece of writing. Do you think that's going to go anywhere at all? You're still working on that, or?
I don't know. The wind has been rather taken out of my sails with it. I mean, I think you know, I'd like to think it would, considering the time and effort I put into it, and I think it is really good. But whether anybody would like to written anything set during a pandemic, even if it isn't about a pandemic per se, I have no idea. I know I probably fucking wouldn't. What I was saying about my friend Paul is his newest book, which is out very soon, I think, which is called Survivor Song, is actually about a pandemic as well. Although obviously his book is, you know, was with a publishing house before that ever happened. So somebody says that please do a kids book. I actually talked about doing a kids book with our friend Krent, who did the artwork for How to Stop Your Brain in an Accident. He does lots of really great stuff. Most of his stuff is just, well, not most of his stuff. He does a good line in really grotesque caricatures of Nick Cave. I would advise anybody, if they're into really crazy caricatures of Nick Cave, to check out. His name is Krent Abel, or Steve. But you know, when you're called Steve, you've got to come up with a nom de guerre, don't you? But yeah, I'm hoping that I do finish the book. I just need to. I just need the whole world to forget that there's been a pandemic before I can actually devote the hours required into it.
And have you done anything relatively long form before, or has it just been, you know, because I know you've done a lot of articles.
I've written 2 books. The first one was kind of a historical fiction, I suppose. It was okay, but like with anything, when you write a book, you're learning to write a book. The first one, I wouldn't be embarrassed if anybody saw it, but I wouldn't want to release it in any sense. The second book I wrote was more of a collection of short stories, again based around a particular event. It got a bit out of hand in the end. It was about 90,000 words long. I sent it to about 4 or 5 publishers, and then decided I wasn't quite ready for that as well. That was about year and a half ago or something like that. But again, just a useful, in the same way that, you know, the secret of writing a really great album is not to write 12 songs, is to write 100 songs and to pick the best 12. I doubt very much that anybody's written a great book the first time that they tried. And obviously, like a lot of us, we'd like to make some money because of goods and services that we require in a first world economy. I think more than that, we'd like to do something which was great or good or fun or entertaining. And with a book, you've got to, I mean, a book, what takes you maybe 8 hours to read, 10 hours. That's a lot of time for somebody to devote to something. One of the weird things, I mean, it's the same for as somebody creating one of those things. One of the strange things with writing is when you write a song, and you know what it's like as a musician. Sometimes a song can take as long to write as it takes to play. Sometimes to use a cliche, it feels as though it writes itself.
Yeah.
And then you can just bounce that down, send it off to somebody, and you can have a reaction. The song idea you came up with half an hour ago, you can be getting a reaction from your friend or this guy who's been working with you. Straight away you can engender this kind of excitement. It's not quite the same with books.
No.
You know,
it's so long, the process. It's so
long, and even somebody who's going to end up being very supportive because of the way publishing works might end up getting back to you for 3 weeks. It's because you're either used to playing a show and getting that instant feedback. Gratification is one way, definitely one way of looking at it. Whereas that patience isn't necessarily. I actually have I'm not so much into inspirational quotes, but I do, aside from my Ocado and Asda orders and a note for some returns I have to make, I do have the word patience written on my whiteboard, because patience is
difficult. I'm someone who, like you say, you really want to kind of get running with something and move it forward relatively quickly. And I find that very natural with music, and the pacing of music and releasing, albeit like making an album which might come out a year later. Like, it's not so bad because you're working on things along the way. But the daily patience and the daily like confidence that you have to have when kind of rewriting and re-editing things is just
nice.
I'm really interested. It's difficult. It's
I find that element of it. I find that element of it quite hard. It must be said. I mean, though it is different. I mean, McCluskey Do Dallas was recorded in May 2001 and wasn't released until April 2002. So there was 11 months behind the release. Whereas with the Christian Fitness albums, I basically released them the second they're finished. I think I released one album at 10 past 11 on a Friday night, which shows the
social media like hotspot time to
absolutely. I mean, there's not a better time when 70% of your audience, for want of a better term, is fast fucking asleep. So I need to be maybe more I don't know, focused with my brand.
On that note as well, because obviously it's only placed on. It's probably quite a boring discussion, but you only place it on Bandcamp, which I guess is kind of good because it drives people towards the product, I guess, of the CD. I'm someone who likes physical stuff, and it's nice to have bought those CDs because they're really nicely put together. The artwork by Michael, is it Bukowski?
Bukowski, I think it's pronounced.
Is amazing. So was that part of your and financially, does it work out better for you than obviously people just going to streaming sites?
Yeah, a hell of a lot better. I mean, for me it's partly a financial decision not to put it on Spotify. I don't like Spotify, so that's why I don't put it on Spotify. I'm just not a fan. I don't stream music myself. A lot of people I know do, and that's fair fucking play to them. But just not really. Just not. A lot of the Future the Left stuff is on there. I was kind of like not talked into that, but told that was probably the best way to go. And whatever. But with the Christian Fitness stuff, I mean, the Christian Fitness stuff doesn't make me a living really, but it probably gives me an equivalent of half the money you'd need to live at minimum wage for about a year if I release an album a year. So I don't want to siphon any of that money off to a Swedish conglomerate. I just don't want to. I mean, they are Swedish, aren't they? Spotify, I think they're Swedish, aren't they?
I'm not sure. Maybe.
Yeah. Herd Immunity, the streaming songs years. It's not really. I mean, I understand how streaming works, and because obviously it's been prevalent for years now. It fits into people's everyday lives, and it's part of the everyday for people. I'm far from convinced that it's healthy for music in general.
Obviously it's like this time's kind of proved it because of obviously all the live fees and show fees and merchandise sold at shows kind of goes away, and then obviously the streaming side's just kind of like a lost cause really, so you're only left with merchandise to really do anything. So
there's somebody here saying I get it, but that's basically how I find all new music. cool, and that's great. It's great that it works for you, and it's not to say it isn't part of the the infrastructure about the way some people like consume it would be the right music here, consume music. It's just similarly, I just like choose not to be a part of that. Just
and also if, like with young bands, obviously there's a pressure to kind of get the music out there. I mean, in some ways we still are doing that within our career. Like there's a lot of people who obviously don't know about us, so you have this kind of pressure to put it on those platforms because they are the usual platforms where people go. And I think it's just a bit frustrating that that doesn't pay you pay you a fair amount, really. It's just
well, yeah.
it's a
Well,
bit
to be honest with you,
odd.
when it's such a derisory amount of money, like when you do a show and somebody, I mean, I remember doing the Barfly when that opened in Cardiff years ago. We were supporting a band called the Crockett's, who were a band. I don't know if anybody remembers them. And like with a lot of Barfly shows, you had to tell, when you turned up at the door, you'd say which band you were there for, and
Yeah.
they'd pay you on the basis of how many people had turned up to see you. And I think we had something like 70 of the people turned up said they'd come to see us. And the guy, when he was paying us the end of the night, he went, "Listen, we've just had the venue refurbished, so we can only afford to pay you 15 quid." I'm like, "Oh, just don't bother. I don't want 15 quid for doing the show. That's not going to be the difference between me paying my rent or whatever. I don't want your money. Like, why would we even fucking bother? Like, if you're going to take the piss, take the piss. Don't offer some crumbs as well. That's been a really bizarre thing about doing these McCluskey shows for
Yeah, no,
the last year or so. Actually making money and actually getting to keep most of the money. I still don't get used to that. There's still a part of
yeah,
me which is guilty of actually make money. I came back from the Australian tour, and that's why I've been able to, well, not panic as much as usual financially, because I spend my whole life panicking about money usually, but I'm not panicking at this stage because that money is carrying me over this period.
yeah.
And it just feels so strange. I feel like somebody's going to turn up and take that money away from me at any.
It is when you've
Actually,
been
being
used to that.
paid fairly for a show is just crazy. The
Yeah,
amount of times I've done a show to a full room, 800-900 people, and came away with 25 quid is just ludicrous. But hey, I'm not complaining about making money. I must reiterate that point.
no, and like you say, I think you were kind of saying like it's nice for you to not to do this. I guess this McCluskey asterisk again, and in a way, you're getting paid for probably what you didn't get. What like
Yeah,
I don't know how ago, like 10, 15 years ago. Like I don't know. Yeah, it's
yeah. I'm getting
but it's
paid.
nice to see full rooms.
It's weird. I'm getting paid for work I did, 16 years ago. Playing the long game, mate. That's what I'm fucking doing.
Yeah.
Playing the long game.
Can you do anything else, or can you have you got any other talents? If it all went to pot, what?
I have no talents at all. It turns out I'm okay at reading to a child and making sure that she doesn't dash herself on some fucking rocks or whatever it is that children try and do.
You almost killed someone earlier, so
I, I,
is that
I,
part
did,
of
I
reading?
didn't,
Or?
I didn't almost kill her. She almost ultimately killed herself. That would be the best way of looking at it. But no, I don't have any talents. People do from time to time suggest stand up because of what they see live, but I just don't have the whatever you need for stand up. It's all very well doing stand up when assassin. Yeah, I'm not sure I could be an assassin. It's all very well doing it when you've got a guitar and everybody's turned up to see you. And also as well, nearly all good stand up, you need to be really self-deprecating. And stand ups, they all have a thing, don't they? They all have a quirk, for one of a better term, a USP or something. I'm
Yeah,
not I'm not prepared to present myself as a loser in order to get laughs from it. But I'm probably actually too insecure for that. So
is James Acaster he's a big Future of the Left fan, is he?
I'm not sure I'd characterize him as a big fan, but he definitely contacted me because of I went to the BBC. It was probably about a year ago to do a podcast that he was doing with various people and a comedian, but that hasn't seen the light of day yet. I'm not sure if it was. Well, chances are, if he's getting in artists as niche as us, or as niche as me, then chances are it didn't have that much of a fucking uptake, I reckon. Because he wrote a book about music which came out in 2016, which ended up encompassing the Christian Fitness album, This Taco Is Not Correct.
Oh, did it? Yeah.
So he wrote about that like briefly in there. But yeah, I'm not sure if he'd characterize him as a big fan or whatever. But that's one of the great things with one of the great experiences of doing this. I met the comedian Mark Thomas because of liking our music as well, and he's one of my favorite comedians. So yeah, it's been fun. Probably not as newsworthy at the minute, obviously, but I mean they're both incredibly funny gentlemen. So fair play.
Good stuff. So what's your plan for the rest of the bank holiday evening? Have you got a busy evening planned tonight?
I'm gonna do some exercise now. I did have a beer, but I finished that 40 minutes ago, so I reckon I'll be all right. Do that, then put the stinker to bed. That's my daughter, not my wife. And then try and write some music.
Yeah.
That's my plan. That's my plan every single night. And this has encouraged me.
Exercise, is that? Are you going off on a run or?
No, I had a run earlier in the day, which is when I had an incident with the bike wanker. So
oh yeah,
having a lot of
how much do you, not as a I'm just interested because I've been running, but how what kind of distance do you do? Do you run every day?
I run every day, but I don't do the distances I used to do. I used to run about 3 years ago. I was running about 18 miles a day.
Oh wow!
But as a result, I ended up with injuries, as you would assume. I ended up with a bad back, but my bad back was usually to do with tight hamstrings as opposed to the back itself. And so the second I worked a lot on my hamstrings, my back got better. But I probably only run on average about 9 or 10 kilometers a day at the minute, and at an easier pace, because I'm also doing like HIIT stuff in the house for about half an hour a day as well. So so as a result, if I'm going for a run after doing that, I'm pretty fucking knackered anyway. So I kind of coast that at about 5.5 minute, kilometer, not pushing it. Yeah, like 3-4 years ago, I would have been properly pushing it and trying to see if I could get like 16 miles under 2 hours, but not anymore. I just don't have the will to train to that kind of level. I'm trying to do just exercise in general. Damien was talking about some push-up thing he was doing the other day, so I'm trying to do. Of course he was, yeah. I'm trying to do 150 push-ups a day at the minute as well. So.
Really? Yeah. And then you can finally get to do McCluskey. Is it going to be like a face-off on stage?
No, I don't. I don't think I have the. I don't think I'll ever be able to have the heft to.
I don't know what
to
is
deal
it like
with that young man. No.
Kind of Merthyr Tydfil bones. I don't know. Have they got bigger bones up there? I don't
know. I think they've got. Well, if you've ever heard his story about accidentally taking steroids, that should tell you everything. That should tell you everything you need to know about that part of the world. But no, I'm not going to. Jack would win. Jack would win. Jack always says he's the second hardest man in rock, but he'll never tell us who the hardest man in rock is. So, yeah, Jack would. But yeah, I don't see there being a lot of flexing on my part anytime soon. It's not really my style. Sorry, I've done my weird pedo uncle
Not
laugh
really.
again. I'll try not to do that.
Anyway, yeah, a little bit. It violates the community standards.
The community standards, yeah, we all know how important they are, particularly to
Especially at
people.
these times.
Yeah, especially during these difficult times. What's happened? Is Dominic Cummings still with us? Has somebody shot him out of a cannon yet? No, that's a shame.
Lord knows.
That's
Yeah.
a shame, isn't it?
So yeah, that's 7:30. So maybe I should you go do your exercise. But thank you
Yeah,
so much for
no worries, mate. An absolute pleasure.
having a
You know,
chat and catching up.
technical problems follow me around. Don't worry about that. It's just anything I do has a
And
technical problem. Don't worry about it.
like that fucking synth that you have, or whatever it is.
Did you know if anybody
Yeah.
wants to experience love and loss in the same moment, just buy yourself an analog synth. It's a great way to be kept on your toes. Sometimes it doesn't work if it's too cold. Sometimes it doesn't work if it's too hot. Sometimes it doesn't work if it's exactly the right temperature. So it's exactly like a marriage. Boom! Hey, see what I did?
There we
It's
go.
called a joke.
You
But
should
yeah,
be inspired.
everybody take care.
Cool. Yeah.
No racist dancing, no racism of any sort. No chili peppers. And I think if we do that, we'll all be fine.
Sweet. Well, cool. Have a lovely evening, and
Ciao.
hopefully I'll see you in person
Yeah,
sooner rather
in
than
the real
later.
world
But
where people can talk. Yeah, you know what? I reckon we'll see each other within. Here's my guess.
IRL, I believe the kids say.
7 weeks. That's my guess.
Let's make it happen. Well,
Seven.
we can't make it happen, but you know, let's
And
hope.
everybody take care, unless you don't want to, in which case stop taking care. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Go to Durham. Bye bye.